Thunder rolls across a scorched battlefield. Smoke hangs low over the ground, thick enough to stifle breath. In the distance, a single spark ignites a roar that tears the air apart. The earth trembles. Bodies scatter. The sky flashes as if the world itself is being unmade. It is the sound of gunpowder, an invention that promised power yet delivered centuries of devastation. The scene shifts. A dim, silent room, metal restraints, cold against pale skin. A trembling figure lies on a table stained with chemical burns. Harsh, sterile light reveals doctors in shadowed coats, their faces hidden behind masks. A drop of mold-derived liquid falls into a syringe. The miracle that would one day save millions begins its journey here. In a chamber where countless unnamed people endured experiments no one was meant to witness. Another world emerges, a factory in the heart of the Industrial Revolution. Steam hisses from iron pipes. Gears grind with relentless force. Heat shimmers in the air as children with soot-covered faces pull heavy carts beneath towering machines. Every movement is timed. Every mistake is punished by steel and fire. The engine that would change history demands payment in flesh long before it reshapes society. 3 inventions that lifted humanity into a new era. 3 breakthroughs celebrated as triumphs of human genius. Yet beneath the brilliance lies a truth rarely spoken. Progress has never been clean. Behind every discovery that transformed civilization stands a shadow made of suffering, sacrifice, and silence. What if the greatest achievements of human history were also forged in darkness? And what if the price of moving forward was far higher than anyone was ever told? Before the discoveries that reshaped civilization, the world stood at the edge of chaos. Across continents, empires rose and fell under the weight of conflict. Armies clashed over borders that shifted like shadows on a map, forcing nations into an endless search for weapons powerful enough to decide wars swiftly. The balance of power trembled, and every ruler knew that a single breakthrough could redefine the fate of kingdoms. It was an age where fear and ambition walked side by side, guiding the hands that sought new ways to dominate the battlefield. Beyond the war fronts, a different battle unfolded inside crowded hospitals and disease-ridden cities. Plagues swept through neighborhoods without warning, claiming the young and the old with equal cruelty. Clinics struggled against illnesses they could not name, and treatments amounted to little more than guesswork. Families waited outside infirmaries, listening to the choking coughs and fading breaths of those who had been brought in hours before. Science offered hope, but its tools were primitive, its knowledge incomplete. The world needed a miracle, yet miracles demanded experimentation in places where ethics held no power. Far from the hospitals, the air of Europe thickened with smoke rising from the first factories of a new era. As the demand for coal grew, mines plunged deeper into the earth, carving tunnels through darkness where men and children worked beneath the constant threat of collapse. Cities swelled with people seeking wages, only to find themselves trapped in grinding labor that spared neither muscle nor spirit. The promise of industrial growth hung over them like a half-formed prophecy, glorious for the visionaries who imagined it, brutal for the workers who made it real. Everywhere, the same invisible tension stretched across society. Nations longed for power, scientists longed for solutions, industries longed for expansion. Progress became the ultimate pursuit, a force capable of lifting humanity out of ignorance and into a future shaped by innovation. Yet in that pursuit, moral boundaries blurred, desperation overruled caution, curiosity eclipsed compassion. The world was ready to advance, but not ready to protect those who would bear the cost of its transformation. It was within this fragile and volatile landscape that the inventions destined to redefine history began to take shape, born not only from brilliance, but from the pressures, fears, and contradictions of an era that demanded progress at any price. The origins of the inventions that would reshape the world began in places far removed from the dramatic consequences they later unleashed. Long before gunpowder thundered across continents, it existed as a quiet curiosity in ancient China. alchemists seeking elixirs of immortality mixed sulfur, charcoal, and saltpeter, unaware that the crackling substance in their bowls would one day alter the fate of nations. At first, it glowed and sparked like a harmless spectacle, lighting festivals and ceremonies. But as knowledge traveled westward along trade routes, fascination evolved into ambition. Kingdoms recognized its potential not for celebration but for conquest, transforming a mystical powder into a force that would rewrite military power for centuries. Far from the smoke of battlefields, another discovery began in an ordinary laboratory filled with cluttered petri dishes and forgotten cultures. A lone plate contaminated by mold revealed a strange clearing where bacteria could not survive. The phenomenon appeared almost accidental, insignificant even, yet within that small circle of destroyed microbes lay the seed of penicillin, the substance that would become the cornerstone of modern medicine. To turn this fragile discovery into a life-saving drug required testing, refining, and repeated trial. But in a world desperate for cures, the line between scientific advancement and human cost blurred. Research expanded behind closed doors, often involving individuals who were never given a choice or a voice. Meanwhile, the foundation of the modern industrial world emerged from the dark caverns of coal mines and the restless imagination of engineers searching for a more efficient way to harness power. Steam had always been a natural force, rising from boiling water, drifting from the earth. The revelation came when inventors realized it could be captured, compressed, and directed to move pistons and wheels with mechanical precision. The earliest engines were crude and unpredictable, yet they offered something the world had never possessed: the ability to transform raw energy into motion on a massive scale. As more powerful models were built, factories expanded, mines deepened, and cities pulsed with new activity. The machine that promised to propel humanity forward was born in fire and iron long before it reshaped daily life. Each of these origins shared a common thread. None began with grand visions or heroic intent. They arose from accidents, necessities, and relentless curiosity. But once the spark of discovery caught the attention of rulers, scientists, and industrialists, the path forward became irreversible. The inventions themselves were brilliant. What humanity chose to do with them would determine whether they illuminated the world, or cast shadows that would linger for generations. The first great shift came when gunpowder stepped beyond the realm of experimentation and entered the hands of armies desperate for dominance. As European states armed themselves with cannons forged from thick iron and muskets packed with volatile powder, war transformed into a spectacle of thunder and smoke. Battles that once relied on steel and muscle now erupted in fiery blasts capable of tearing through walls, armor, and ranks of soldiers in seconds. The roar of artillery shattered not only fortresses but the old codes of warfare. Conflicts grew deadlier, faster, and more expansive, driven by nations hungry for land and superiority. The substance born in a quiet alchemist's workshop had become the engine of destruction that reshaped the map of the world. In a different corner of history, the pursuit of medical progress took a darker turn. As the promise of penicillin grew, laboratories sought to unlock its full potential. Volunteers were rare, consent was seldom requested. Patients who could not speak for themselves found their bodies used as testing grounds. Prisoners, marginalized groups, and the mentally ill became subjects in experiments designed to stretch the limits of the new medicine. Some trials succeeded, revealing astonishing healing power. Others ended in silence, their failures recorded only in private notes and hidden reports. Behind every bottle of life-saving antibiotic that would later reach pharmacy shelves lay the stories of countless individuals whose suffering became the foundation of modern cures. While scientific research pressed forward, cities thundered with the rise of industry powered by steam. Factories expanded into massive complexes where machines consumed coal by the ton and demanded a workforce capable of relentless endurance. The pace of production tightened like a vice. Children were sent into narrow gaps between spinning gears to clear debris, their small bodies considered more manageable than tools. Women hauled heavy loads alongside machinery that never paused. Men labored beneath clouds of soot that coated the lungs in thick layers of dust. Accidents were frequent, often catastrophic, with injuries treated as inevitable costs of innovation. Steam engines, once simple experiments, had become the beating hearts of cities, and the cause of misery for those trapped beneath their rhythm. As the demands for progress intensified, societies began to justify the sacrifices made in its name. Governments expanded weapon production to maintain power. Medical institutions defended their methods in the pursuit of breakthroughs. Industrialists argued that hardship was necessary to push civilization forward. The world, driven by ambition, drifted further into a realm where advancements were measured not by the lives they improved, but by the power they granted. The momentum of change was unstoppable. Each invention accelerated the next challenge. Each discovery unlocked a new realm of consequences. The darkness behind progress deepened, setting the stage for a moment when all of these forces, warfare, science, industry, would clash at their highest intensity. Flashes tear through the night as cannon fire erupts in relentless waves. Each explosion sends a shock through the ground, lifting soil and debris into the air like a storm of iron fragments. Smoke thickens until the horizon disappears behind a curtain of burning haze. From the center of the battlefield, a burst of light engulfs everything in its path, erasing ranks of soldiers before their screams can reach the wind. Gunpowder has reached its full potential, no longer a tool of strategy but a force capable of collapsing entire worlds in an instant. The battlefield becomes a crucible where ambition, fear, and destruction blend into one. The scene shifts with the suddenness of a cut. A metal door slams shut in an underground laboratory. The clang echoes down a sterile hallway. Inside, a row of restrained bodies lies beneath harsh lamps that buzz with electric heat. Needles clatter against trays. Jars of penicillin stand lined along a wall, glowing faintly under the light. A doctor's gloved hand hesitates for a fraction of a second before lowering a syringe into an arm that cannot resist. Monitors spike, then collapse. A single breath escapes, shallow and final. Silence floods the room. The miracle drug that will later save millions begins its mass testing here. In a chamber where countless lives vanish without a trace. Outside the door, calm footsteps continue as if nothing has happened. A rush of steam roars like a beast awakening. Gears grind with metallic fury. A machine lunges forward as a belt snaps, flinging sparks across the factory floor. Workers scatter, but the engine does not stop. It snarls and heaves, pulling cords, lifting iron arms, crushing whatever catches in its path. A young worker loses balance. A scream rises, swallowed instantly by the hammering rhythm of the pistons. The factory trembles under the weight of its own creation. The steam engine has become more than a machine. It is a hunger, fed by the labor and bodies of those who stand too close. The three worlds collide in a single moment of overwhelming realization. War consumes nations with fire. Science pushes past the limits of morality. Industry devours the vulnerable in its race toward progress. Across continents and generations, the same truth rises like a shadow impossible to outrun. Every leap forward is built upon a foundation of sacrifices hidden from history's spotlight. The cost of progress reaches its highest point. The brilliance of human discovery burns brighter than ever, yet its glow reveals the darkest corners of civilization. When the echoes of cannon fire faded, the world was left standing amid ruins it had created for itself. Cities once fortified with stone now lay fractured by the power of explosives forged in pursuit of victory. Fields that had carried the weight of soldiers were marked by deep craters, reminders of how easily landscapes could be rewritten by human ambition. Nations counted losses so immense that even triumph tasted hollow. Leaders who had once celebrated the strength of their arsenals now confronted the realization that destruction had grown far beyond their ability to control. What had begun as a promise of tactical advantage had evolved into a force capable of dismantling entire civilizations. In laboratories far from the noise of war, the aftermath took a quieter but equally haunting form, as penicillin finally matured into a medicine capable of saving the gravely ill. Reports of unexplained deaths and vanished subjects circulated behind closed doors. Attempts were made to bury them beneath the triumph of medical progress. Yet the shadows persisted, carried by the memories of those who had witnessed the early trials. Families asked questions that received no answers. Institutions rewrote their histories, distancing themselves from methods once justified by desperation. The miracle stood, brilliant and celebrated, but the cost of its creation lingered like a faint stain on the record of scientific achievement. Factories driven by steam continued to expand, but the ground beneath them shifted. Workers who had endured years of exhaustion began to recognize the cruelty woven into their labor. Protests emerged in streets darkened by soot. Voices previously silenced by fear demanded safety, fairness, and dignity. Slowly, reluctantly, industries yielded. Regulations formed. Limits were imposed. Machines were redesigned to protect rather than endanger. Yet the memory of those who had fallen into the gears of progress could not be undone. Their stories became the foundation upon which new laws were built. Across every field touched by these inventions, warfare, medicine, industry, a shared truth began to surface. Society had sprinted toward the future without looking back, only to discover the weight of the sacrifices it had made. Innovation had delivered extraordinary power, but it had also exposed the fragility of the moral lines that were meant to guide progress. As the world stepped away from the most turbulent moments of its transformation, a quiet reckoning took hold. The momentum of discovery continued, but now it carried the echoes of lessons carved by suffering. What had been hidden began to emerge in the historical record, piece by piece, as scholars and witnesses unearthed the stories long overshadowed by triumph. Civilization moved forward, but not without glancing over its shoulder, aware at last of the shadows left behind. Time moved forward, carrying these inventions into eras far removed from the circumstances that created them. Gunpowder laid the groundwork for modern weaponry, shaping the conflicts of continents and the diplomacy of nations. Penicillin opened the door to antibiotics that would save millions, transforming medicine into a science capable of confronting diseases once considered invincible. Steam engines ignited the industrial systems that powered transportation, manufacturing, and global growth. Each innovation became a pillar of the modern world, celebrated as symbols of human genius and ambition. Yet beneath the admiration lies a quieter, more enduring truth. The shadows woven into their origins never fully disappeared. They linger in the lessons passed down to new generations of scientists, engineers, and leaders who study the decisions that shaped history. The tragedies, the sacrifices, the overlooked lives become warnings etched into the progress that followed. They remind civilization that advancement is not simply a matter of brilliance but a test of conscience, demanding awareness of the consequences that accompany each step forward. As museums display the tools of past discoveries and textbooks recount their achievements, an unspoken question remains suspended between the lines. How many lives were changed, improved, or saved because someone else faced the darkness first? The stories hidden behind these inventions challenge the modern world to confront its own ambitions with greater clarity. For every breakthrough unfolding today, the past whispers a caution, urging a balance between the pursuit of innovation and the preservation of human dignity. And so, the legacy endures, complex and unpolished, brilliant in its impact, somber in its origins, a reminder that progress moves in two directions at once, one toward the future, and one back through the memories of those who bore its earliest burdens. If the next great discovery rises tomorrow, the question will return with renewed force. Not what it can achieve, but what it will cost.